So before we get started, comment below and let me know who you think would win in a fight. Cthulhu or Godzilla? Welcome to the Eldritch collection. My name is Aaron Peterson and I will be your curator. If you haven't watched Godzilla, King of the Monsters or read Call of Cthulhu, this is your spoiler warning. In the most recent film, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, we see the titular character fight Ghidorah for dominance over the other titans. If you love seeing huge monsters face off and destroy stuff and don't mind really campy dialogue, then this movie is for you. But my biggest takeaway from the film was the similarities I saw between Godzilla and Cthulhu. Throughout the movie, the monsters are referred to as gods or titans.
My God, Zilla.
Titans, which lay dormant under the ground or under the sea. And until recently in this Godzilla universe, these titans have been watched over and studied by a shadowy group known as Monarch. Not quite a cult, but it rings a similar note. One of the most striking visual parallels between Godzilla and Cthulhu is where Godzilla lives. His lair is an underwater or hollow earth city. In his house at Relay, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. In his hollow earth city, wounded Godzilla waits wincing. The whole sequence in the submarine where the humans are taking the warhead to Godzilla is full with Lovecraftian imagery, especially if you look at the stories Dagon and Call of Cthulhu. There are bas reliefs of humans worshipping Godzilla. Godzilla is seen as a deity or a god in the city and the hieroglyphics therein. Godzilla and Cthulhu are both shrouded in ancient mysteries and hold incredible power. As I watched the most recent film, these comparisons made me think, what would happen if these two squared off? So let's get to the fight. For the sake of this argument and simplicity, let's just use the Godzilla from the two most recent American films. Godzilla has changed a lot over the years, and with each new depiction, he changes wildly in both size and capabilities. According to the Godzilla fan wiki, the most current version is anywhere between 350 to about 400 feet tall. He's also around 90,000 pounds. In watching the films, you can see that he's definitely stronger than most of the other monsters that he encounters, but he's also a bit slower. More of a hulking brute than a nimble attacker. He has the ability to shoot radioactive fire out of his mouth, and to discharge a nuclear blast if properly charged by a warhead. Cthulhu is actually a bit more difficult to fully describe and know his true powers and capabilities. In the Call of Cthulhu, the imperfect narrator, Francis Wayland Thurston, uses third-party descriptions and sculptures to describe Cthulhu. The sailor that actually saw Cthulhu and survived was hardly able to describe him at all. We get the sense from both of them that Cthulhu's powers are metaphysical, in that he can reform his body and that he can make lesser creatures, such as humans, go insane either by just looking at him or through dreams. Here's how he's described in the book. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yields simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surrounded by a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings. If we look at illustrations outside of the source material, we get a better understanding of this squid dragon. And luckily, we have a pretty clear parallel in King Ghidorah. Just replace the three heads with a bunch of tentacles, make the wings a bit smaller, add arms, and King Ghidorah is a pretty good physical representation of Cthulhu. So as long as the humans can cooperate with Godzilla, supercharge him with a nuclear warhead, then I believe Cthulhu would suffer a similar fate to Ghidorah in the film. But there's Cthulhu's metaphysical and mental capabilities we need to contend with. If he can reshape himself at will, then Godzilla is screwed. If Cthulhu can make Godzilla's human allies go insane, he's equally in trouble. Also, we don't really know how smart Godzilla is. It is my opinion that Godzilla isn't quite as smart as a human. He's a lizard, a pack animal, and acts like a monster, not a cosmically vast intelligence. So I think it's reasonable to suggest that Cthulhu could make Godzilla go insane. But you counter that Ghidorah had an alpha call that Godzilla was able to resist in the film. So maybe Godzilla could resist the call of Cthulhu. Basically, it boils down to this. If Cthulhu is more like Ghidorah, then Godzilla has an even chance, and it would be a pretty close fight. But if the Great Old One is more like an old god, instead of a massive hydra, then Godzilla has every right to be as afraid of Cthulhu as we would. I happen to think the latter. So in the fight between Kaiju and Eldritch horror, I would say the horror wins. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.